Penguins and Sabres tonight. We go from one giant to another. Jeff Skinner to Darren Pang from TNT. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to see you. Good to see you, too. Old goalie.
Panger.
Did a great job of the trade deadline day, too,
well,
pal.
Thank you. We were talking off the air about the size of goalie equipment. When I broke into the league, I thought I had small pads. They were 34-inch tall. Like now, goalies have 36 plus 2, 37.
A little smaller than Garth's.
Yes, but they do have regulation, but they're still tall. Yeah. Panger, what were the size you said?
Mine were 27 inches.
Like.
I went to give them to a kid that was playing Pee-wee because I had lots of sets and they were too small. I had, the different thing. Okay, so when we were playing Major Junior A, you're playing Midget, Major Junior A, and even you get into maybe your first couple of pro seasons, I'd never had anybody actually measure to make them custom. So the first one was a pair of Bryans, a set of Bryans. They were white, all white. I had Bayard gloves, red, white, and black, and I had a really custom mask, white with 2 stickers that had Blackhawks on them. That was really well done. That was really well done. But what I found out was all those years from your what do you call it now? From your crease, from your ankle to your toes, they were always too long.
Yeah.
And when I got them finally measured, my skates were 5.5s. So if you think of how short that is, what a significant difference. So from there to there, instead of there to there and hanging over the side, or everything being a little bit pulling in tight or whatever. And it was the first time I put them on. The first time we went on a road trip to L.A. Bob McGill said, "Are you wearing those?" He was always interested in if you're wearing your equipment. I said, I put them on once, Big Daddy, and I can't believe how good they felt. It was like magic.
Wow.
So the first time ever. But now you think about it, my skates, I was 5.5. So
that's like Nathan Gerby. like 5 or whatever. But
I was always a Nathan Gerby fan, by the way.
Okay, well,
and Brian Giunta.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love those guys.
Okay, biggest story, because we don't have a lot of time. Is precious, right?
I got to do my hair and makeup before the game.
As do I. Biggest story coming out of the trade deadline, and maybe it would have been regardless, but now it clearly is the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, what are you hearing? How are they going to get through the Dadonov situation, their injury situation, their cap situation, their playoff predicament situation?
The most interesting story in the NHL. I mean, so eager to win, so antsy to win, so maybe lacking some patience to win. The thing that any organization has to be careful about, I think, is that you want guys to know that when you're there that they've got your back, and that you sign there as a free agent and you're excited about being somewhere. You want to know that if things aren't going well, that you're not the one getting shipped out. I really feel for Dadonov in this situation. I mean, it sounds to me like it's quite clear. Sounds to me like there's certain responsibilities to know whether or not a guy's got a no move, no trade. And if the player has that and doesn't want to go to a place that's highly taxed, which sounds like that's the California and Canadian teams who are on his list, well, he has that right, because he has that in writing, it seems like. So this is an eye-opener for a lot of GMs, though.
How do you feel?
You got to be checking all the time to see what's going on.
How do you feel as a player? So for the first time this year, Vegas is out of a playoff spot right now. They are out of a wild card spot as we speak this morning. That's the biggest thing. 2,
blows me away.
So Dadonov is being shipped to free up some cap room to be able to bring back Stone or Martinez or somebody. It's not happening. Now, how do you feel being that guy coming back in the lineup, having all the other 22, 23 players looking at you saying, you're screwing us over? You are the guy now.
I don't know. I think the players nowadays are more like, even when a guy holds out, they talk in the room like, hey, it's business. It's business.
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
you just lived it with Tarasenko.
Right. There's a good example. That is a great example right there. And yet,
but they're in the playoff spot. And he's scoring a ton of goals.
But that's the point. Nobody would have projected that. And that's also what's odd about Dadonov. He was actually producing in the absence of all those guys who were injured, and then he gets kind of,
singled out,
kicked to the curb, kind of expected based on salary. But then it's like, well, if he now can't play anywhere else, like, wouldn't it be smart if we try to welcome him back in and get the most out of him?
This is unbelievable.
But how do you
really unbelievable?
Right, but then how do you do that? Because you can't and still get the other guys back in unless you make some other crazy transaction, which can still happen despite the deadline having passed. It's just whoever you then choose to move can't play for anybody else.
Yeah.
And what kind of ripple does that create? Like, what if they pick one other guy that we're not thinking of right now, and they say, we got to do it, and then that guy's season ends? Like, he's traded, and now he can't play for the final 20.
This is an NHLPA. This is a bigger thing than us.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago. I just retired, and the Sharks were just in the league. And in fact, I believe I called the game for the Sharks. They fired Dennis Hull that morning. I did a game with Joe Starkey.
Oh, yeah.
Legendary 49ers play-by-play guy, and he was in the first year. So I get a phone call, and they say, hey, listen, we've got an issue with Dennis Hull's not doing the game tonight. It's in Chicago. I know you've been doing college hockey. Can you do it? And it was trade deadline day, if I'm not mistaken, and I might have my years mixed up, and if I do, forgive me. But the Blackhawks, I think, traded for Kelly Kizio from the Sharks. The fax didn't go through. He had his bag over. They walked the hallways, and he's emptying out the stuff in the Sharks bag, and he's ready to go. And the game's. The NHL rescinded that trade, and he had walked all the way back over there. So it's a little different situation. But I remember at that time thinking that's an uncomfortable one. But this one here is one for the ages.
Yesterday, the word is that they could still trade Dadonov, and he could play the rest of the season. Just wouldn't be able to play in the playoffs if that team. But then it was corrected, and Elliot Friedman said, no, if you put Dadonov on waivers and the team is willing to take him, he's not allowed to play for the rest of the season. If you trade him to a team that's willing to take him, not allowed to play for the rest of the season. But that may cost Vegas a lot. But they traded all their top prospects, and they don't have a lot of picks. So what's the incentive? Like, there may be another player attached to it. Like, if you're a team and you say, yeah, we'll take Dadonov, but we want this guy as well. Now, these two guys could come over,
but they can't play. Oh, to the beach we go. Seasons.
They're going to get back skated for a month.
No, I think it's direct. Direct deposit.
Yes.
And then flip-flops.
And the Cayman Islands?
But then the other side of this, too, is trying to make the cap work without having this transaction in your back pocket. And then everybody starts, again, assessing, okay, how diligent is the league going to be in making sure that these players are actually injured so they can be kept on long-term until the season ends? Like, this is like, if you thought you were under the microscope before, wouldn't you think that, like, there's going to be so many people digging into this story. I don't see how the NHL or the NHLPA
and general managers
and
managers around the league,
competitive balance.
No one's getting a free ride here in a cap situation when everybody else is highly scrutinized.
So we had the Kucherov thing last year, right? And now you have Dallas, Nashville, the Edmonton Oilers, the LA Kings that are competing with Vegas for that spot. You think that all these GMs are calling the league and they're like, hey. Wait, they're holding out.
They're in cap hell right now.
They're in cap hell. So
and this didn't work because there was
How about the league though? So the process, you talked about the fax machine back in the days that had to go through. Now at 3:00, there's a queue of trades, and they have to go through and they pull out all the paperwork and they say, okay, does it work with the cap? Does it work with all the no movement clause?
Yeah, it got in before 3, but it still has to go through.
But the league did not have
the list.
All the information in the list that should have been attached to the contract.
The list. Was it like it was on a piece of paper somewhere? I got the list.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, whose responsibility is it? I mean, is it really Ottawa's responsibility to have that there, or is it Vegas's responsibility to know what the situation is?
See, when you say it that way about the list, you know what I think of? Like artifacts, right? Like Hockey Hall of Fame. Because Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, you go there and you see, like, literally napkin notes, liners, like lyrics written on napkins and telegrams and, like, all this stuff. And it's like, how did they get it? Now I want to go and I want to see this list.
I want to see you wrote it.
It was crumpled up, and now it's been extended into a nice little frame, and it's matted with the exhibit that is Vegas 2022.
Evgenii Dadonov / we don't know what his last name is going to be next.
Dadonov.
Exactly. There it is.
I know.
So it's the dominant story.
I think there was a number of teams, as we well know. I mean, Anaheim ended up taking it because they've got the cap space, but I think it was not a very big secret that they were, they were moving that to as many teams as possible to get that going. And the deadline's going now, and it's going.
Ryan Getzlaff is wondering where's next paycheck's coming from. Is it coming from Vegas or it's coming from the Anaheim Ducks?
You mean Kessler?
Kessler, not Getzlaff, right? Ryan Kessler.
Yeah.
He's retired. Well, he's not playing. He's hurt. He's retired, but he's still going to get a paycheck. So
can we even sit here and handicap anything in the West without knowing how this situation gets resolved? Because at the end of the day, if healthy, Vegas still has to be considered a top contender despite their slump here, right?
Well, yeah, more concerning to that entire organization and the players and the leadership group there is what kind of hockey are we playing right now? We were a team that back-checked like crazy. We're a team that put pressure all over the ice, and now it's a little bit of a riverboat gambling kind of team, and they're you can take we can talk about their cap issues and who's injured and whatever, but they've got to get back to playing playoff hockey right now, and that's not playoff hockey. What's going on.
And I missed the first half of the game last night when they outshot Winnipeg 22-4, only to then fall behind one. I saw the aftermath of not scoring early, and it was ugly. Yeah. There was no passion in their game defensively. And then I flip over to San Jose and Calgary, and San Jose is so far out of it right now. Even though they've been competitive all year, they're not really in it. And I'm seeing Barabanov sell out on a blocked shot to what looked like the middle of his back as they're trying to protect the lead. And I'm like, there's no comparison. There's no comparison here, and that's a big indictment on Vegas right now.
It is. That's the fun thing about going around and watching the games and going. You clearly get a very good, accurate picture of where the team is at when you watch. The Buffalo Sabres are a great example. I mean, I've been. What are they? 6-3-1, maybe the last 10.
6-4 last 10.
But the way they're playing, now you're looking at some of these teams and you're like, they're playing really, really well. And then you can see the teams that have checked out. I'm not saying that Vegas has checked out, but they're not showing that same kind of game that you just described. You turn on a Calgary game right now and it's like, I'm ready for playoff hockey. The minute that puck is dropped, just watching the Calgary Flames play right now.
You talk about the Sabres. Obviously, goaltending has been a big story this year because they started the year with Craig Anderson, and then it was a mixture of Dustin Tokarski, Aaron Dell, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. We had Michael Hauser.
I like the way
Malcolm
you say
Subban.
Ukko-Pekka.
Ukko-Pekka. It's like one thing.
It just rolls off your tongue, like a French guy saying something in Swedish or Finnish.
Darren Pang. I could say that. But we've had Michael Hauser, Malcolm Subban. We've had a bunch of them. Do you remember what you were doing when you were 40 years old and if you could have played like Craig Anderson is doing right now?
40 years old. I retired at 26. I got hired at ESPN at 29. At 40, I thought I was a really old guy and was probably out of my broadcasting career. Now I'm 58, still doing it. Sore like you read about? No. 40 years old.
Hey, at 40, you were probably sipping a good glass of wine with the late, great Dave Strader. Right?
You got that right. Yeah, we were probably on Chippewa Street after one of the games, and Strader was coming up with some kind of limerick about some stats guy that bet us on something. Next thing you know, Strader is taping a song with a guitar and based on Fitzgerald there, that song there.
How often do you go back?
I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. Geez, I laugh about that. Every time I come by on Chippewa Street, by the way, and I think Buffalo Sabres fans know that Steve Levy, Dave Strader, myself, we covered a great era here. And not only did we cover the great era here, we absolutely 1,000% embrace this place. We embrace the bars, the Chippewa Street, the restaurants, the golf courses. I mean, we really had a blast here. I got to tell you that.
How often do people ask you about the time where you guys in ESPN before it came back to the NHL that Gary Thorne and Billy Clement and those guys? Like
Lots.
A lot of people grew up listening to you guys. Like, do they ask you a bunch of stories? I remember you guys used to do the Sabres game, and Dominic Hasek has stopped 72 of 73 warm-up shots today. Like it was like the focal point. It was unreal.
I remember going to the locker room, and he had those nail clippers hanging on his stall.
Do not touch
these. But I had a good relationship with Dom too, which was helpful. Because when I retired, most guys retire and their buddies are coaches or assistant coaches or becoming managers or whatever, because all my guys were like Bill Clement wasn't, he was long out of the game, and so he was coaches and managers, and so they relied on that part of their broadcast preparation. And I remember bypassing some of the greats ever. I remember not listening to Scotty Bowman do a press conference because I wanted to go in the locker room because Scotty would take so much time outside. He did it on purpose so all the players left. So I would slide by and I wanted to go in the room, and I was more of a player. Like I just left the room. And so when you know, I think that those ESPN days, people do ask those questions, and I try to remember now how I've advanced as a broadcaster, because what did John Davidson do? What did, you know, Gary's a play-by-play guy, and he's different, like in terms of the preparation. But for Billy, I mean, that was a guy I looked up to and watched the way he prepared, and ultimate pro, and I'm way different. Like these guys, like they were so focused on their open and what words they were going to say. I could do the open 17 different times, and I would say 17 different things. Like there was nothing structured about where I was at. And it's not like I saw a squirrel and I started talking about a squirrel, but I took something from John Davidson at that time, and JD said to me, don't bring the game in a briefcase. He always said that. The game's the game, and you can be prepared and get all your notes ready and do your stuff, but it's going to change. So don't jam stuff in when it clearly doesn't fit. And I have followed that advice forever. He's been really but people do ask a lot of questions about those days, and they were fond days for me, bud. I mean, they were very fond days. I started my career with I thought the greatest broadcasting company and organization, and they taught me an awful lot.
So after ESPN, you went to Arizona?
I did.
And then went to St. Louis when JD got to St. Louis, or is that out at Fold?
I got a phone call on July 1st from ESPN and said
free agent Darren Pang.
They said I had 2 years left on my deal, but of course if they don't get the rights to the NHL, that I was a free agent. So I got a phone call from Mike Barnett, Cliff Fletcher, and somebody else. They were in a conference room in Arizona and asked if I'd go there. I'd been in Chicago for 20 years. The kids were, and I'm like, okay. So I kind of waited for a little bit and, you know, looked around to see if there was anything else out there.
See the golf clubs out of the corner of his eye.
Yeah, and there was a new network starting up, and did it start as Outdoor Network?
OLN. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So, and we had some conversations, but I had really felt odd about going from somewhere for a long time, ESPN and ABC, and going there, and I was like, you know, maybe this is the time for a new thing for me. Then I got a phone call from them, and they said to keep it under your hat, but Wayne Gretzky's coaching. I dropped everything. I said, what? They said, Gretz is coaching. He'd really like you to be here. Yep. Moved the kids, moved everybody out there, put a putting green in the backyard. I'm ready to roll. Had the best 4 years, honestly.
So
it was unbelievable.
99 was coaching. Did you get a call from 98? Jeff Olbrook?
Of course I did. Hollywood?
Hollywood?
Yeah.
So Hollywood was our video coach here when I was here.
Of course.
But they called him 98 because he's always a step behind 99.
He was always. He saw the play. He saw the play. He just couldn't get to the play. We love Hollywood. 98. We had a fun time. Darren Blake.
Yeah.
You know, we just had a fun time. Wayne Gretzky, people have no idea just how much he thinks about other people all the time. We'd be setting up dinners before. You'd get a text, 520 lobby, couple of cold beers, dinner, steak reservations, Capitol Grill here. We're all going to go out there. 8 people, coaches, always included me. Like, unless there was some kind of business stuff, he's like, hey, Panger, we got something going on here. You're on your own tonight. Awesome, you know, but he always included people, and you're hot stoving and talking about hockey, and Panger, you pick out the wine, and you know you got this, and you'd sit at the table, and if there's a person that he'd included in that he didn't really know, he'd make sure that he was surrounded by guys he did, and then he'd look at you and say, hey, the young man over there in the yellow shirt, he's got a jersey of mine. Give me 5 minutes. Bring the kid over. Like we all worked in unison with Wayne. And we never left. This was really great. We never left a restaurant or a bar and let him walk across, get on an elevator, and go to his room. We always had somebody. And it was just in case somebody said something. Oh, you know, Wayne did this and he was alone. Everybody was always together. And he'd always look at you.
Witness.
You'd go to the floor. He'd look at you and you go, you're going back down to the bar, aren't you? Yeah. But it was a great time. And then, yes, John Davidson, we were playing golf, and he said, I think the organization's in trouble. I think they're going to go into bankruptcy. And I said, no chance they are. He was right, and basically not being part of hockey operations, my contract was questionable, and he said, come to St. Louis, which was a real leap of faith on his behalf and mine. Never played for the St. Louis Blues, only played for the Blackhawks. I told him one time, I said, JD, I can't work for the St. Louis Blues. He said, why not? I said, I played for the Blackhawks. He goes, don't kid yourself. You weren't any effing good anyway. And he said, you're a broadcaster.
They loved you in St. Louis.
yeah, they loved you. You always allowed them to score goals on you. Fedorko's got 20. Gilmore had 10. Anyway, so as it turns out, I give JD a lot of credit for taking that leap of faith himself. Well, he saved my bacon because about a month later, I signed, and there's probably some people that were like, well, why don't we have a blue doing it? He signed Eddie Belfour to be the goalie coach. The most hated goalie of all time. And then Eddie didn't stay for very long. But anyway, it was really great of JD, and I thank him for the rest of my life.
We'll thank him, too, because it has just extended your career to where we are today, and we are grateful for that, and really unfortunate that we are out of time.
So, great, Duff.
Panger?
Yeah, good being with you.
Hey,
Great to see you.
They said we were going to have an extended show with you because it takes too long. So
Enjoy tonight.
Wait, I got to give you a present quickly.
Whoa.
So because of you, I have the 4-color pens that I use all the time, the old-fashioned one with the blue and white. This is the 2022 version. It has actually a stylus on the top for your iPad. And so here you go for tonight, just for you, Panger.
I'll be between the benches, and I will have that prominently displayed.
Perfect.
Okay.
I
appreciate it.
gently used, maybe 1 or 2 games. So here you go.
Thanks, buddy. It's always good seeing you. Thanks.
Goalie Union to my left.